You walk into a barbershop, maybe a college dorm, or, even just scrolling online, and chances are you'll see him. Tony Montana,
Mm-hmm. That look?
right? That intense stare, the suit, sometimes the M16, he's just everywhere. And if you've ever stopped and wondered why this specific movie, Brian De Palma's 1983 Scarface, holds such a powerful, almost sacred place in hip-hop culture, well, that's exactly what we're going to get into.
Welcome to the deep dive. Yeah, today we're really taking a journey into this unexpected but really profound relationship between Scarface and how hip-hop evolved.
Yeah, our mission here is kind of unpack why this film became more than just a movie. Like, people call it a cultural scripture, even a holy text for artists and fans.
Exactly. How it shaped the sound, the look, the whole mindset of the genre for, well, decades now.
And look, our insights today, they're not just from, watching the movie again last night. We're drawing from a really detailed, multi-chapter biography that traces this whole connection.
Yeah, across music, art, street culture. It's all in there.
So this deep dive, it's going to pull back the curtain on some surprising facts, some nuances that really make this story pop. So let's dig in.
Okay, so to really get it, we have to start at the beginning. The film's origins are kind of wild. Scarface, the version we know, wasn't the first idea.
That was a remake.
Yeah, of a 1932 gangster flick. But the script we know came from Oliver Stone. And famously, he was battling a pretty serious cocaine addiction at the time.
Right. He went to Paris to get clean, didn't he?
He did. And in that isolation, he took the old story, which was about an Italian bootlegger. Totally different, and completely flipped it.
And this is where it gets really interesting, because he makes the main character a Cuban exile, a Marielito.
Exactly. From the 1980 Mariel boat lift, over 100,000 Cubans came to Florida, but there were all these, often hyped up stories about hardened criminals being part of that group.
So Stone taps into that.
Totally. His rewrite was raw, intense.
Yeah.
You can almost feel the paranoia he was experiencing. Tony Montana became this symbol of, America's shattered dream chasing power and money outside the usual rules.
Okay, so Stone writes this intense script. Then Brian De Palma comes in to direct. He'd done Carrie, Blowout, intense stuff.
Right, but Al Pacino, he was the one who really championed playing Tony Montana, fresh off The Godfather, Dog Day Afternoon. He saw something in Tony.
What was it? The darkness?
Yeah, the darkness, the theatricality, but also something magnetic. Even though he's a villain, there's this tragic quality. So Stone, De Palma, Pacino, that trio created something that, honestly, critics were really divided on at first.
Yeah, I remember it was controversial. The violence.
Hugely controversial. But just a few years later, it becomes this cultural touchstone, especially for a whole generation looking for a different kind of hero, maybe.
So when the movie drops in late '83, Tony Montana, let's be real, he's no hero in the traditional sense.
Not at all. He's angry, greedy, super violent, stubborn.
Yeah.
Self-destructive, really.
There's something else there. He's also fearless, right?
Yeah.
Unapologetic about wanting more. Fiercely ambitious.
Exactly. And that's what clicked, especially for Black and Latino youth in urban areas facing, poverty, lack of opportunity, police brutality.
So seeing Tony rise from dishwasher to Kingpin, it wasn't about wanting to be a drug dealer?
For most, no. It was more like seeing someone fight back, demand respect, build something in a world that felt like it offered them nothing. It was that pursuit of power, even if it was extreme. He became this kind of surrogate anti-hero.
Reflecting that raw desire to make it, even when the system's stacked against you.
Totally. And his words.
Yeah.
Man, those lines became iconic.
Oh, yeah. All I have in this world is my balls and my word. That one hits hard.
Right. Or the whole philosophy, in this country, you got to make the money first. Then when you get the money, you get the power. Brutal, but
it resonated. And of course, say hello to my little friend. You can't escape that one.
Never. These weren't just cool lines from a movie. They became like mantras. They got woven into hip-hop lyrics, into freestyles. They even started shaping how people carried themselves. Shorthand for ambition, grit, power.
And it wasn't just the character and the lines. The sound of the movie was huge, too.
Oh, absolutely. Giorgio Moroder score. He was a pioneer with synthesizers.
That pulsing electronic sound, it just dripped with tension, but also glamour.
Totally. Tracks like Tony's Theme, Rush Rush, and especially Push It to the Limit. They created this feeling, almost like invincibility, relentless drive.
And it's kind of wild how Moroder's synth sound was almost mirroring what was happening in early hip-hop production at the same time, with drum machines and synths.
It's a great point. There was this natural synergy. It wasn't just background music. It gave MCs who were still grinding underground this whole emotional palette to tap into, and they definitely started sampling it.
Okay, so the sound was influential. But visually, one image really stands out above all else, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, the blimp. The world is yours, floating across the Miami sky.
That wasn't about the violence or the drugs. That was pure ambition, the dream, ownership.
Pure aspiration. And the ultimate expression of that, arguably, is Nas.
Illmatic, 1994.
Exactly. A kid from Queensbridge projects titles a track The World Is Yours. It's considered maybe the greatest hip-hop album ever.
And that track just echoes, Tony. I came from nothing, but I'm taking everything.
It perfectly captured that feeling. And that phrase, the world is yours, it just exploded in hip-hop. Tattoos, clothing lines, jewelry. It became this symbol of believing in yourself, dreaming big, no permission needed.
Yeah, it tapped right into the core of hip-hop, didn't it? That hustler's mindset.
Absolutely. Tony's whole philosophy, relentless hustle, building your own thing, it became like gospel in places where regular jobs were scarce.
It wasn't just about quick money, though. It was about control.
Yeah.
Building an empire, being independent.
Right. And you saw rappers take that mindset and apply it directly to their music careers. Music wasn't just art, it was a business. Albums were currency, rap became this launch pad for other ventures.
Like Master P, building No Limit Records, controlling everything, production, distribution.
Exactly like Tony wanting to control his supply chain. Or think about Nipsey Hussle later, with his proud-to-pay model, owning his masters, selling direct. It's that same drive for self-sufficiency, for control. The music is the product, the artist is the CEO.
And some artists didn't just reference it, they embodied it. Like literally took the name.
You got to talk about Scarface from Houston, Brad Jordan.
Right. He always said he didn't idolize the crime part, but he understood the pain, the ambition, the darkness in Tony.
Yeah, and with the Gato Boys, he brought this incredible emotional depth, especially to Southern hip-hop. Think about Mind Playing Tricks on Me.
Oh man, yeah, vulnerability, paranoia, violence, all mixed together. It felt different.
It was different, and his solo stuff. He became this philosopher king of the South, talking about mental health, racism, faith. He kind of evolved beyond Tony's fantasy by keeping it real, grounded.
Then you have someone like Jay-Z. He seemed to study Scarface on a whole different level.
Oh, for sure. Tons of references in his lyrics, interviews, videos. But for him, it seemed less about the literal crime.
More about the game.
Exactly. Survival, building an empire, but also betrayal, paranoia, the weight of being on top. A line, I'm like, Scarface sniffing cocaine, holding an M16C with the pen, I'm extreme. That says a lot about his artistic intensity.
And then there's Rick Ross. He basically became Tony Montana, or at least his public persona did.
Totally. Sampling Push It for his big hit, calling his album Port of Miami. He embraced the whole aesthetic.
The suits, the marble, the money, the danger.
Yeah.
It was all there. He crafted this image straight out of the movie's playbook.
Yeah, that image itself became huge. Tony's look, the white suit, red shirt, cigar.
That became the blueprint for the hip-hop mogul, didn't it?
Undeniably, it got absorbed right into hip-hop's visual language, album covers, murals on buildings, and definitely music videos.
You see it in 50 Cent's What Up Gangsta, Ross's Hustlin', Jay-Z's Big Pimpin', the neon lights, fast cars, mansions, the chaotic shootouts.
It's all there. The movie basically gave hip-hop a visual template for telling stories about the hustle, the rise, sometimes the fall.
And before everyone had cable or internet, Scarface really lived in the underground, right? Passed around on bootleg VHS tapes.
Oh, yeah. Barbershops, dorm rooms, street corners. Watching it was like a rite of passage for some people. A lesson in ambition, loyalty or disloyalty, and the dangers of the game.
Then DVDs came along in the early 2000s, and it got a whole new life, especially with trap artists.
Right. P.I., Jeezy, Gucci Mane, Future. They were all referencing it. Future's track, Tony Montana, in 2011 was huge.
Yeah, that brought Tony to a whole new generation.
And what's interesting about trap embracing it is they didn't just focus on the rise. They really understood and often highlighted the fact that Tony didn't make it out alive. There was that cautionary element, too.
Beyond the music and the looks, Scarface even became like a merchandise brand.
Totally. T-shirts, hoodies, posters, collectibles. It's everywhere. But maybe the most interesting thing was that video game in 2006. Scarface. The world is yours.
Oh yeah, I remember that. You could survive the shootout.
Exactly. You could rewrite the ending, rebuild the empire. And that kind of showed something deep, didn't it? Hip-hop didn't really want Tony to die.
They wanted to reboot him, fix his mistakes, win.
Yeah, live through him, but get the victory heated. It was like a digital second chance. The world could actually be theirs.
Okay, but we got to acknowledge this whole obsession. It wasn't always seen positively, right? There's a complexity
For
here.
sure. Critics definitely pointed out that hip-hop's embrace of Scarface could seem like it was promoting toxic masculinity, materialism, glorifying drug culture.
And you can see why they'd say that. I mean, Tony's downfall isn't exactly noble. His paranoia wrecks everything. His greed consumes him. It's a dark story.
It is dark, but maybe that flawed reality, that ugliness, was part of why it resonated. He felt real in his flaws, like the artist watching him.
So the film wasn't necessarily teaching crime, but maybe reflecting a harsh reality. What happens when society kind of leaves people behind?
Possibly. Or showing the desperate things people might do. It was this raw look at ambition and power and its consequences. Artists could use it as a mirror for their own world, the pressures they felt, not just as a lifestyle guide.
And one thing that maybe gets overlooked sometimes is the paranoia.
That's a huge one. As Tony gets bigger, his anxiety, his mistrust just spirals. He pushes everyone away. It's a powerful warning about the mental toll.
Right. And you see rappers, Scarface, the artist himself, has talked openly about depression, Kanye, Kid Cudi, Joe Budden, exploring their own mental health struggles.
Yeah, they found that resonance, that cautionary tale in Tony's spiral, the connection between success, pressure, betrayal, and your own mental state.
So even now, decades later, you're saying Scarface's DNA is still in hip-hop.
Oh, absolutely. It's still running through its veins. Drill rappers in Chicago, the UK, they still quote Tony, not just the rise, but that whole rise and fall narrative structure.
You still see the murals, the fashion collabs.
All the time. Tony's story, ambition, struggle, the tragic end, it keeps finding new generations who feel unseen, unheard, underestimated. Its relevance just endures.
So at the end of the day, Scarface wasn't made for hip-hop.
Not at all.
But hip-hop really claimed it, took the rage, the vision, the tragedy, and gave it a beat, gave it a voice.
Yeah, it transformed Tony from just a movie character into this complex symbol, survival, ambition, but also that crucial warning about power corrupting.
So here's something to think about. In a world where chasing dreams often means hitting walls, systemic obstacles, how does this story, a story about ruthless ambition ending in total disaster, still manage to be both an inspiration and a warning?
Right. What parts of Tony's journey do you, the listener, think still hit the hardest for artists and audiences today? Why has this very complicated legacy stuck around for so long?